Which 2023 NFL draft quarterback heading into year two is going to have the best 2024 NFL season? We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayer. So, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen, every download, every subscribe button hit is greatly appreciated over here as we're getting through these summer months. DP, we brought up the conversation. We're talking about NFL drafted quarterbacks year two, right? So guys that were drafted last year's draft, 2023 NFL draft, what guys will make that jump? We've seen CJ Stroud emerge, right? But there are a bevy of a lot of names that we want to see take that second step, and we're going to get into that conversation. But before we get into that conversation, DP, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Keith, this discussion, which year two quarterback, like you said, CJ Stroud just bursting onto the scene, had an incredible year. Right, some say it was the best rookie year we've seen probably since Andrew Luck when he came to the Colts. I think those were probably the two best rookie years we've seen in a long time. Heading into year two, I think the easy answer for a lot of people probably is CJ Stroud, right? But I think when the names that, like you said, is a bevy of guys: Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell with the Raiders if he wins the job and keeps Gardner Minshew on the bench. Like, there's opportunities for all these guys to have strong seasons. But when you think about the best season, who do you think has the best? Is it CJ Stroud? Does he repeat as the top QB from the 2023 NFL draft?
I think that's the layup, right, DP? Just saying that it's going to be CJ Stroud because he has such a strong rookie year. And the expectation is that everything has stayed the same / they've gotten better. I think anytime you add Stephon Diggs to any receiver core, you've gotten better, right? And then you're talking about improving even the running back situation. You added Joe Mixon. So they added two NFL veteran pieces with guys that I think are going to be hungry, that are going to enjoy playing for DeMeco Ryans. And all of that is going to support CJ Stroud having an even better year. Now, talking about, I want to take the layups away, DP. We didn't have this conversation to walk in the gym and then just get in the layup line, right? Mm-hmm. I want to look at quarterbacks. We're talking about having the best year, and I thought about taking your guy, but I'm gonna go with Bryce Young. I'm gonna stay true to the fact of having a conversation of situations matter. This is a team that has heavily invested into the offensive line at the end of the day, right? I believe they brought in a center and a guard, or two guards.
Yeah, like $100+ million spent in free agency.
Yep, $100+ million on top of drafting Xavier Legette, bringing in Deontay Johnson, right? And then trying to improve the running back situation with drafting Jonathan Brooks. So I look at the Carolina Panthers, I look at Bryce Young, and he's going to be in a significantly better situation I'm expecting. And then just what Canales did, I had to go back and I had to watch the film from the Tampa Bay Bucks, right? And there were a lot of, and this is, I hope that this doesn't get taken as a negative way because of how we talk about it. But there was a lot of college elements to it. And I mean that in a positive thing, that it's going to be familiar to Bryce Young, but also the college game has somewhat taken over the NFL game, right? So it can't be looked at as a negative situation, is that they're doing things that are successful for the quarterbacks that they have. So I'm going to go with Bryce Young, DP. I want to get your reaction to that.
That's for Bryce Young to outperform the rest of the class is going to be tough. Like I do think I love what they did. I know some Panther fans are still a little worried about certain things. I absolutely love what they did. I love getting the 2 guards. They got to figure out the center spot. That's probably the question mark for them heading into training camp. Is Austin Corbett going to be the guy? Is he healthy? Can he take those snaps at center? I think Braden Christensen, who is the BYU tackle that they played tackle and guard. I think he's supposed to be getting some snaps at center as well. So that's the spot they got to figure out to really solidify the interior offensive line so that Bryce can really be able to step up in the pocket, because like if he can step up in the pocket and find throwing lanes, that's going to help him from a confidence standpoint, right? Then for Ike Ekwonu and Taylor Moton, that just makes their job easy, because like if my quarterback can step up, I could just run edge rushers around the arc and push them wide outside, you know what I mean, and make sure nobody gets across my face back inside. So getting Deontay Johnson, Jatavian Sanders, I don't know when we see Brooks, you know what I mean? I think we'll probably be a Chuba Hubbard year. And Chuba Hubbard had a good season last year. Like, a lot of people don't really like pay attention to the Panthers offense. Chuba Hubbard had a good year toting the rock. So I think that, him and Miles Sanders are a good tandem. So I don't know how soon we see Brooks, but having Brooks and of course Xavier Legette and the rest of the weapons that they have there, I think he's going to be improved. Do I think that he will be the best or the top guy? No, I still think that I think he has to be the guy that has to have those answers against the coverages he's going to see, right? When teams say we're going to go man to man, you're going to have to make some tight window throws. And that was something that he really struggled with in 2023. And the receivers didn't separate, but down the field, I give Mingo a lot of flack, Keith. I give Jonathan Mingo a lot of flack. But when I watched the tape, when he got vertical, that was where he won. Like he was able to win the vertical play and be a big physical guy on the outside. And Bryce was overthrowing, underthrowing. It's like you got to start connecting on those passes, because Mingo's not a well-refined receiver to be a true route runner for you. So, hey, whatever his bread and butter is, I need you to take the knife and get the bread and butter it, Bryce. Like, I need you to do that for him. So I think he's going to be much improved this year and give them a lot more confidence heading into next offseason, where I think they'll have money and they can start spending more on the offense and defense.
Yep, I have a question. So part of the concerns that you have, DP, does that tie back into the evaluation that you have for him out of the NFL draft, or was this something in Carolina that was related to the situation?
I think goes back to his draft profile. Like, you know what I mean? The vertical ball down outside the numbers. It's not, they brought in DJ Chark last year. A lot of people were excited, like, man, like get more field stretching. I'm like, well, we're going to see how this works out. I remember going to camp and, we always talk about it, right? Seeing guys in person throw and feeling the arm talent or whatever, lack thereof, or if they have it. And I remember seeing the deep ball and I was just like, man, these balls are hanging. They're not pushed out in front. Like guys are having to make adjustments. I'm like, and I remember telling some of my people in the Panthers meeting, I'm like, listen, if this doesn't improve, like if teams are going to put a cap on your offense, like, and that's what ended up happening. Like they have to hit the deep balls early in games to back defenses off. So I do have concerns about that part. But with you add Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson and those varying skill sets, I think that what you're probably going to have to do, and I shout out to Dave Canales, I think we're going to see more horizontal vertical plays from Bryce, where it's going to be deep crossers, stuff like that, where it's like, hey, unless Xavier Legette's like streaming wide open down the sideline, and Bryce is, and it's crazy because Bama has a history of this. Bryce, Tua, Mac Jones, all limited arm talent, but they're anticipatory deep throwers. Where it's like, if I could see single high, that safety's on this far hash, I know my guy's going to win. They drop back, see that guy has 2 steps, they just get it out there. But if it's tight man-to-man down the field and he got 1 step, the accuracy and ball placement is a little lacking. So I think he's going to be improved. I think the offensive line is going to be good for him. They're going to run the ball. And I really think Dave Canales is going to help him. I just don't think he's going to be the top guy. We'll get into who my top guy probably is going to be in the next segment.
There we go, DPU. You're leading right into the transition, baby. So coming up next, man, I revealed who I think could be my top guy for the 2023 NFL draft class that will have the better 2024 NFL season. So coming up next, man, my guy, Mr. DP, Damian Parsons, is going to reveal who his top guy is going to be. I think I know who it is. And if you listen to this podcast well enough, you probably have a hint on who DP is going to pick. But coming up next, man, we're going to pick who is DP's top Year 2 NFL quarterback.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And guys, right now, you can get ahead of the game and start making your preseason bets for college football and the NFL. Heisman, MVP, playoffs, national championship game. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Keith, you said no layup. So CJ Stroud is clearly the layup out of this group, right?
No layups, DP. You gotta put at least a mid-range jumper. You gotta pull mid-range or behind that, right?
That's I'm not going to art basketball, baby. The midi is a lost art. The midi is a lost art. I think for me, man, of course, like I said, no, not factoring in CJ Stroud. I like Bryce, but I think a healthy Anthony Richardson is probably going to be the guy for me. And I think looking at what he did last year, the games he played early in the season, the running ability, the arm talent, the throws that he's able to make against tight coverages, the high-low reads, the high-low coverage. You got the underneath two-man under, still able to fit the ball in, hole shot, stuff like that. And that's without an actual tight end. You know what I mean? And that the relationship between him and Josh Downs, I think now with paying Michael Pittman, and I think bringing Adonai Mitchell into this mix is so dangerous to add to this offense. And it's crazy because we didn't see Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, because Jonathan Taylor was battling the contract situation. Then when that figured out, I think he was a little dinged up. And then by the time he was ready to go, Anthony Richardson got dinged up. It was like, man. So I think now seeing like this offense, like how we talked about with Bryce, right? Bryce has more weapons now. And it's like, I expect to see a better version of Bryce. You know what I mean? And now seeing what I saw last year with A-Rich, adding Adonai and Jonathan Taylor, hopefully Jelani Woods can be that tight end that they need. The big 6'7", 260-pound, what did he run, like a 4.5 in the 40 or something crazy like that?
He was moving.
Adding that big vertical threat, you know what I mean, up the seams, off the play action, off the RPO game, that's dangerous. And I think that if anybody, in my opinion, and everybody in the AFC South, and this is no shot to, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are a good team. I think the Colts are the Houston Texans' biggest threat for the AFC South crown right now. And it's not just A-Rich. I just think their roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they're young on defense, but I think Anthony Richardson is primed for a big year. And listening to him, for me, I always listen to how guys carry themselves, how they operate. After the season, they interviewed them and stuff. The season was over. They lost the week 17 game or week 18 game, which would have put them in the playoffs if they won. They lost that game. And they asked him, like, man, what is your takeaway from the season? And I love this answer. He said, if I was playing, we make the playoffs. And I was like, that's a very true statement. You nearly made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew, who was not the most accurate, and he couldn't give you the same type of physical ability in terms of running the ball, getting plays, making plays with his legs. I think Anthony Richardson is primed for a big year, Keith. And I think long as they can protect him, which that offensive line is pretty good for the most part. I think they might have added somebody else in that offensive line room. But overall, if they stay healthy and he stays healthy, this is an offense I expect to put up a lot of points, and it's going to be very difficult to defend.
I have two questions, DP. I have two questions because there's a segment of people out there that looks at Anthony Richardson and says 6'4", 6'5", ran a 4.4, 240 pounds, freak athlete, great arm, XYZ. How do you buy in to Anthony Richardson? Because the truth is that he has yet to put it all together on film. So what are you buying into to say that this crop of quarterbacks he's going to be the best one? Because even in his time at Florida, right, it was not great film. So what are you buying? And then Indianapolis Colts, obviously he got injured early on. what did you see that you are buying into to say like, hey, that was enough? Because we didn't necessarily see great play in college, and then there just wasn't enough out there for year one in the NFL. What are you buying into for those people? Because there are segment people out there like, hey, how do you buy into this when he simply hasn't done it before? So I want to talk about what are you buying into? And then secondly, the second question, the two-part question, who has the better situation, the Colts or the Texans, as far or Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud as far as supporting cast? I want to talk about both of those.
So what gives me the ability to buy into what Anthony Richardson. Of course, we had this discussion during the draft season, right? Like, I'm a tools guy at quarterback, ceiling, that type of thing. But even at Florida, I watched a guy and remember talking to Osiris Torrance, his offensive lineman. He said, "Man, listen, after the first couple of weeks, he put us on his back and he led us. Like, we didn't have the defense, or we didn't have the receiving weapons to really elevate him. He was elevating the rest of us." And for me, it's like watching him. Of course, I have the Colts in my NFL region over at the Draft Network, and studying those first couple games. And I'm out the game. And I remember texting our boy Daniel Harms. I remember texting him as I was watching the Rams game. I was watching the All-22, and that was the game that I felt like the Rams game, and then early in that Titans game where he got hurt on that kind of freakish, the QB sweep outside, backside defender falls on his shoulders type of thing. And then he had the AC joint sprain that became a little bit more serious, most serious AC joint sprain I think I've ever seen. And he hadn't needed surgery. Though that Rams game, you start to see him really put it together, like a full game of passing, rushing ability, like the things that for me is like when people talk about offensive line play, like, man, what happens when the pressure gets back there? He's got Aaron Donald on his back and he's throwing a move like an absolute rocket in the middle of the field, right? Being able to move in the pocket, get away from those guys, it's not easy throwing Aaron Donald off of you. You know what I mean? Like, not many quarterbacks are able to do that. Be able to break free from Aaron Donald. He had a touchdown pass in that game, and they were down big too. They were down by like 3 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford was cooking them, their defense, and they ended up making that game almost went. Did it go into overtime? It might have went in overtime, and then the defense ended up like giving up a touchdown and everything. But just watching him put that together, where it's like, all right, you have to throw the ball, and we can't focus as much on your legs and running the ball. And he was up for the task. He handled business, like getting the ball to the tight ends, getting the ball to his weapons, and distributing. The one thing that of course, comes with reps, anticipation. You see throws where you want him to rip it, but he's not at the NFL level. He's a little timid. He's like, I don't trust that middle linebacker right there. I'm gonna slide, buy a little extra time, and then get the ball. So he still completed some of these passes, but it's like you can get it out a little bit earlier if you with the reps and improving in anticipation. So for me, just watching those games he played, and we got to that Rams game, and then the beginning of that Titans game before he got hurt. Like the accuracy, the ball placement, and a lot of his issues were either coming out of college were reps because he didn't play a lot, and then just kind of mechanics. He's a heel clicky at the top of his drop, even still as an NFL player. You saw some of that, and that threw off the ball placement at times, but you could tell throughout the game he will fix that issue, and then accuracies, A+, ball placements there, throws that not like the throws that he makes. The Josh Allen, the Pat Mahomes, the Justin Herberts of the world, they make those throws. Like, that's the type of arm talent. And I'll give shout out to Will Levis because he can make those throws too. But to your second question, Keith.
You know what? I want to do this because we have to transition, and I don't want to cut this segment short. We have to transition real quick, and we're going to talk about it, right? Who has the better situation? Both teams, right? We're talking about the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans. They got better in the offseason, right? And if you lean towards what DP saying, right, this is going to be an Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud race coming down the stretch, right, as far as supporting cast. So I want to get into that and say, hey, because we believe that supporting cast help a young quarterback. And both of these guys appear to be in good situations, but it's not just about being good. Who has the best situation, right? So coming up next, we're going to talk about which quarterback has the best supporting cast of these year 2 quarterbacks entering the 2024 NFL season.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shot for being our everydayers. The best situation, Keith, in the AFC South And I got to throw in Will Levis too because of what they've done on offense in Tennessee. I think it's Stroud. I think you have to say Stroud, right? I think when you have a defensive-minded head coach, they added the things they did defensively. Like I know the Stephon Diggs is always going to be the big spotlight on offense, but adding Danielle Hunter to that pass rush with Will Anderson, adding Kamari Lassiter in that secondary opposite of Derek Stingley, your boy out of LSU, who had a great season last year. The linebacker play, like people wonder what was Christian Harris going to look like as an NFL linebacker. Well, you can speak to Keith, the Texan in your region. He played good ball last year, man. Like you saw that athlete play football and play linebacker. I think they also added the Nico Autry in that defensive line. They added more pieces on this defense to me, and that's why like the Colts' biggest question mark is defense. And it's because they're young in the secondary. They didn't really address the cornerback position at all. And like, granted, they got Leitu Latu, they got Kwity Paye. They have their defensive line is going to be stout, in my opinion. They got some good linebackers too, and everything. But it's the secondary, the corners is where, man, you're hoping Julius Brents A stays healthy and B takes a step, right, as that second-year cornerback. And it's just a lot of youth in that secondary right now. So I think the safeties are fine, but that's where I look at the AFC South, and I'm like, man, it's to me, it's the Texans because they have the best of both worlds, offense and defense.
Yeah, so you threw a curveball in there with me because I wasn't factoring in the defense at first. I was looking at just the offense, and that's why I was going to look at it. And I'm like, I don't know. Anthony Richardson may have, like, you're talking about a really good situations with now they're 4 wide receivers deep, right? That I think that we both can say that we feel good about the entire wide receiver core and all wide receivers that we felt like could be good NFL players, right? From Michael Pittman all the way to A.D. Mitchell as far as the guys they have, and then adding Jelani Woods. And then you talk about a healthy, ready to roll, just Mustang Challenger, whatever call you want to call him, Jonathan Taylor, right back there, who can be all pro and potentially at one point we talked about being the best running back in the entire NFL, right, to be able to hand the ball off to. So I think it's an excellent situation for Anthony Richardson. And then I agree with you, CJ Stroud. I think it's built in a different way, right? Yeah. As far as with how they built the teams. But you're talking about Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, who DP, I watched him when I had to evaluate him. This guy is well on his way, or should be. You're talking about like that nice blend of size, speeds, athleticism, playing with strength. He can be a top 10, top 12 wide receiver in the entire NFL. From what I seen from him last year, just about taking the next step, and then Tank Dell being an X factor. And then when I was down there in Florida last week, DP, seeing our guy, Mr. Stephon Diggs, getting his workout in, man. Him and his brother were working out. And guess what? He looks like he's ready to roll, DP. He looked like he's ready to roll. So I think an offense that we seen solid last year, taking that next step, could be fairly dangerous, right? And they're talking about a team that made it to the divisional round. So if I had to pick, I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to factor in defense too. I do think that the Houston Texans have the better situation, well-rounded. And I started not to factor in the defense, but I'm going to factor in is because we know that ebbs and flows of games, right? And the defense matters when we're talking about how far can these quarterbacks go, that you're not going to – we seen it with Tom Brady. Sometimes he walked in a game, he was playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. We expected him to put up 35 points. What does he end up doing? They walk out the stadium 19-17, right? Brady threw for 196 yards and no touchdowns and no interceptions, but he had his defense in the game, and all of that propels you to the next step, to the next level. You know you're going to have to see the Baltimore Ravens. You know you're going to be in a tough AFC. So I agree with you. The defense matters, and we have to factor into it. So I think I'm going to hang my hat with the Houston Texans too. DP, before we wrap this podcast up, I think we can't not talk about one of the most polarizing names in this draft class of the year 2 quarterbacks, especially some for people who thought that he was QB1, and that's Will Levis. I want to simply ask, grading, what do you think his situation is when you look at the Tennessee Titans, who appear that they were in a semi-transitional phase, but I think they accelerated really quickly, and shout out to their general manager, Rand Carthon, for doing that. But where do you grade his situation? Will Levis as far as with the pieces they brought in, the offensive line, and the entire situation, new head coach, OC, everything.
Man, I think when everything brought everything together, like I said, the new offense, the head coach, O-line coach, the weapons they brought on offense, I think he's in a really good situation. Like, he just got to go out there and go from that
Is it
basketball. Like,
you say really good situation, I'm gonna cut you off. Is it as good as the Colts and the Texans? Like do you think it's that good, or how do you feel about
no,
it?
because I think he
Okay.
has the worst. He has the worst offensive line. Like, you
Okay.
know what I mean? And I think that's where, if there's any Achilles heel on this offense, it's the O-line right now. And we got to see what Coach Callahan can do with those guys.
And
Who's going to play left and right tackle, stuff like that. But that's their Achilles heel right now, man. And
I'll
we know
probably
that Will Levis
say
doesn't move a lot in the pocket either.
right, and I'll probably say I would probably rank their running back room probably third at this point, right? I like the combination of Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, but give me Joe Mixon and Damian Pierce, and give me Jonathan Taylor with whoever's backing him up, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I like that combination
No,
a whole lot.
100%.
Yeah, a whole lot more, right? And then you look at the receiver core. How do you feel about the receiver core and how that matches up?
I really like what they've done at the receiving core, right? Having a true number one and DeAndre Hopkins, and shout out to the OC last year not doing what Cliff Kingsbury did, right? Cliff Kingsbury put him at the X on the left side of the offense, and that's all he stayed. So you knew where he was going to be every time, right? Defense didn't have to break the huddle and say, "Where's Waldo?" It was like, "Oh, he's going to the right side of the defense." What they did is they moved them all over the place. And I expect to see similar stuff like that, and I wonder if he's going to be, quote unquote, the Jamar Chase of this offense for Coach Callahan, that because you saw Jamar play the X, the Z, the slot, they moved them around, and it's like that keeps the defenses on their heels, on their toes as well, because now you have to be prepared for him to move all over the place. So I love having DeAndre Hopkins, adding Tyler Boyd into the slot. I absolutely love having Calvin Ridley, who I always felt like, man, he has the talent to be a wide receiver one, but he's probably at best a really high wide receiver two. And in this situation, that's what he is. And I think adding those guys that can get open, you got a ball winner in DeAndre Hopkins. Now the thing is, like, similar to the other teams, you have 4 wide receivers essentially, because you still have Treylon Burks. What can Callahan do with Treylon Burks is what I'm really interested in, because with his offensive system, if you can get something out of Treylon Burks, that'll help this offense even more. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think that the receiver core is good. I think they did a good job, putting the weapons around Will Levis, and that running back group is definitely going to be more, I think, pass catching screen game than true. Like, this ain't the Derrick Henry power run, force you into single high. I expect them to see a lot of 2 high coverages. And now let's see how Will Levis handles that and processing quickly, getting the ball out. I think he's in a good position. Talent wise, the offensive line got to do their job. And if they do, I think that he can have a good season.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with that, DP. Just all around, right? Like, he can have a good season if everything is set up right. So there we go, man. And then it just so happened, DP, the quarterbacks we picked, we talked about, right, all in the AFC South. We're talking about a competitive AFC South. And then who are they right on the heels of? The Jacksonville Jaguars, Mr. Trevor Lawrence, who's trying to make it back to the playoffs. Didn't make it last year, right, because of those Houston Texans came out of nowhere and surprised everybody. But I think this will be one of the more competitive divisions for the next 10 years, right, just because all of them have young quarterbacks moving forward. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to say shout out to every day. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. If you can hear my voice, go ahead and hit that like button on YouTube. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shot for being our every day. Is on tomorrow's show. We keeping this same type of structure going. We're going to the running backs: Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet. Which one of these 2023 NFL Draft running backs are going to have the best 2024 season? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.